Here is part 1. No headings, story only. I'll continue with part 2 when you say so. The video was only 37 seconds long, but it felt longer than that. It began shakily, as if the person holding the camera was unsure whether they should even be recording. The frame showed a stretch of ice, cracked and uneven, floating quietly in a gray sea. Wind hissed into the microphone. At first, nothing happened. Then the camera tilted slightly, and there he was. A single penguin stood near the edge of the ice, his back to the camera. He wasn't moving. Not pacing. Not diving. Just standing there, head lowered, flippers hanging loosely at his sides. The caption that appeared at the bottom of the screen read, "He's been like this for hours." No music. No commentary. Just the wind and the quiet presence of a bird that looked, somehow, deeply tired. Within hours of being uploaded, the clip spread across the internet. People slowed it down, zoomed in, added soft piano music, added sad captions. He looked so depressed. Same, little guy. This penguin understands me. Millions of people shared it, projecting their own feelings onto the still figure on the ice. Memes followed, then think pieces, then reaction videos. But none of that changed what the penguin was actually doing in that moment. He was listening. Long before the camera arrived, long before the video went viral, the penguin had been alone. Not dramatically alone. Not freshly abandoned. He had been alone in the quiet, ordinary way that settles in when loss stretches over time and turns into routine. He had once belonged to a massive colony, thousands of emperor penguins spread across the ice like a living landscape. Noise had been constant then. Calls overlapping calls. Bodies brushing against bodies. The warmth of shared breath in the coldest months. He had not stood out. He had not needed to. Being one among many had been enough. But seasons change. Ice breaks. Storms come without warning. The storm that separate. The next morning arrived without ceremony. The sky was pale and flat, the kind of gray that made it hard to tell where clouds ended and ice began. The penguin woke as he usually did, body stiff from the cold, mind slow to follow. He stood, shook the frost from his feathers, and took a few careful steps forward. Nothing felt different. Far away, though, the world was already buzzing. The video had crossed languages and time zones overnight. News pages reposted it with headlines that leaned heavily on emotion. Lonely penguin captivates the internet. Is this penguin depressed? Scientists were tagged in comment sections, asked to explain what could not be explained in a clip less than a minute long. Therapists wrote threads about projection and empathy. Teenagers wrote captions about feeling seen. The penguin became a symbol without consent, a quiet figure onto which millions poured their own exhaustion. Back on the ice, he waddled toward the water and dove, muscles stretching into motion. The cold shocked him fully awake. Down below, everything worked the way it always had. Fish scattered. His body responded. For a few minutes, he was not lonely or viral or symbolic. He was simply alive. When he surfaced, he climbed back onto the ice and noticed something new. Another boat. This one was larger. Louder. It stayed farther away, but its presence lingered. He watched it with mild curiosity, head tilted slightly. Humans pointed. Cameras lifted. Some waved, as if he might wave back. He didn't. He stood still, not out of defiance, not out of sadness, but because movement no longer felt urgent. That stillness, again, was captured. Different angle. Better lens. Someone zoomed in on his lowered head. Look at him, a voice said softly. He's just standing there. That second clip went viral too. Within days, the penguin had a name. Several, actually. Sad penguin. Depressed penguin. One nickname stuck more than the others, spreading across platforms until it became almost. The days that followed settled into an uneasy rhythm. The penguin no longer stood for hours without moving, but he also no longer moved without thinking. Every dive felt deliberate now, every pause loaded with meaning he didn't fully understand. The sound he had heard beneath the water lingered in his mind, replaying itself at unexpected moments, sharp and clear as if it were calling from inside him rather than from the sea. He began calling more often. Not constantly, not desperately, but enough that it became part of his routine again. Each call carried across the ice, strong at first, then thinning as the wind took it. Most of the time, nothing came back. Occasionally, echoes bounced strangely off distant ice, teasing his instincts. He learned not to trust them. The boats kept coming. They stayed farther away now, guided by rules and warnings and a growing awareness that the bird they were watching was not a mascot but a living thing. Still, cameras pointed. Lenses zoomed. Somewhere, people tracked his movements on maps made by strangers who had never felt Antarctic cold bite into their skin. The penguin felt the difference even if he didn't understand it. The world seemed louder when humans were near. Not in sound, but in pressure. He found himself choosing spots on the ice that were less exposed, places where he could stand without feeling watched. Sometimes he slipped into the water simply to escape the sensation of being observed. Online, concern had begun to replace novelty. People argued in long threads about whether intervention was needed. Some demanded rescue, convinced the penguin was suffering and alone. Others warned against interference, pointing out that isolation did not always mean danger. Scientists tried to explain nuance in spaces that rewarded certainty. The penguin, meanwhile, hunted, slept, and waited, unaware that strangers were debating his fate. One morning, the ice trembled beneath his feet. It was subtle at first, a vibration that felt. The ice did not stop moving just because the penguin was no longer alone. It never had. Cracks widened. Floes drifted apart and pressed together again. The world remained unstable, indifferent to comfort or connection. But now, instability did not feel like abandonment. It felt like motion. The two penguins learned each other in small, practical ways. How close was close enough while resting? How far was too far while hunting? Which calls meant danger, which meant curiosity, which meant nothing at all? There was no rush. Penguins do not narrate their lives. They simply live them, moment by moment, adjusting as needed. The penguin noticed changes in himself first. He slept longer. Deeper. His dreams shifted. The blurred shapes of memory gave way to clearer movement, shared paths through water, voices that stayed instead of fading. When he woke, the ache in his chest was quieter, no longer constant. Some days, the other penguin wandered farther, exploring the edges of nearby ice. Each time she did, something old tightened inside him. Not panic. Awareness. He watched her go, then forced himself not to freeze in place. When she returned, he answered her call without hesitation. Trust, he was learning, was not the absence of fear. It was movement despite it. Far away, the internet slowly lost interest. The penguin trended for a while longer. Articles updated their headlines. From lonely to together. A hopeful turn. Some admitted they had been wrong to assume so much from a still image. Others doubled down, insisting the story proved what they had believed all along. Then newer stories arrived. Louder ones. Faster ones. Screens refreshed, and attention moved on. The penguin did not notice. What he did notice was the pull of the water changing with the season. Currents shifted. Fish patterns moved. One morning, he and his companion stood at the edge of the ice and watched a distant line of dark shapes rise and fall against the horizon. A colony. Not close, but real. Owl.